Okay, thank you. I thank Tony for giving that historical background. I think it is very important for us to always ground ourselves uh, on firm foundations of history. It was ironical that the same Ruto stated a few months ago, or maybe a year ago, that history is useless. He said some studies or some programs or courses or disciplines at the university level are useless, and history was one of them. The reason being is that dictators, tyrants, are very comfortable when they are presiding over countries where people don't remember their past, where people don't know what has happened before, the tragedies that have happened before, the errors that have been made before, the atrocities that have been committed before, the plunder that have happened before, so that they can judge the present. Without that historical context, you would not be able to judge the present. Number two, without a firm foundation and grasp of history, you would not be able to know who is deceiving you, who is duplicitous among you, who is always betraying the people. Raila Odinga, as Tony has said, has betrayed Kenyans since 1982. He betrayed Ochuka Okumu and all the people that participated in 1982 coup attempt against Moi, against the autocratic government of Moi. And everyone else that was with him was hanged. He was the only one who survived. The same thing happened in 2018 after I swore him in. They targeted me, they abducted me, they tortured me, they sedated me, they transported. And, and Raila Odinga betrayed all the young people that died during the NRM protests and revolution of 2018. And there were a lot of people who died, and made a deal with Uhuru Kenyatta at night and turned up at Arambe House, quote unquote, having a handshake and saying that he was putting the country first, said that he was going to make sure that there was justice for those who had been killed and maimed and tortured, but then just filled his tummy and forgot about everybody else. Up to now, he did not attend any of the funerals of the young people that died in 2018, 2017, 2018. Raila Odinga has not mourned Chris Msando, who was murdered to prevent the elections of 2017 being credible and transparent. Raila Odinga never visited my home, never saw the destruction, never actually lifted a finger when I was being brutalized, and only came to the airport on the second attempt of me trying to come back to Kenya to pretend that he was showing some kind of solidarity, or he was in solidarity with me. But in fact, the people who are hearing his telephone calls as he sat there were telling me that he was talking with Matiang'i and the rest to keep me out of Kenya. This traitor has betrayed many, many, many people. It's all about his stomach. So when I saw him with the PS for Interior, Omolo, in Zanzibar, and then in Angola, I knew something was up. Because the question I asked myself, when did PS Omolo become PS for Foreign Affairs to be taking Raila around East Africa to campaign for his candidatures for AUC? Why was Raila doing this in the midst of people mourning the dead who had been brutalized by Ruto? Why was he doing this when bodies, not all bodies, had been recovered? When people who had been tortured were still, some of them, still in hospitals? When Ruto had not expressed any empathy and sympathy and had not condoled with families of those who had lost loved ones? Why was he doing this when Ruto had not even acknowledged that the deaths had been by police bullets? He blamed criminals, quote unquote, and he purported that the protesters were criminals and alleged that the protesters went to parliament and approached the armory in parliament to take weapons. The question is, until Ruto mentioned the armory, I didn't even know there was an armory in parliament. And if I did not know, and many of the people that I spoke with did not know, how the hell did he think that the Gen Zs who were just born the other day were aware that there was an armory in parliament and that they wanted to seize the weapons? Was any of the protesters caught with any weapon? The answer is no. Did they arrest anybody? And they have actually arrested and abducted a lot of people. Whom have they charged with breaking into the armory? Can anybody actually break into an armory barehanded? Who was guarding the armory? How many weapons went missing? He has not tabled this kind of information before us, but he's blaming the protesters. He said the protesters are the ones who shot at each other. So now he's saying the Gen Zs and the millennials who were protesting peacefully took guns from parliament and shot at each other. We had a sniper that was stationed at parliament buildings and who was purportedly hired by the speaker or maybe even Ruto himself, who killed many people. Has he been arrested? Was he actually a protester? The answer is no. We have evidence of a police officer who shot randomly wearing plain clothes and shot randomly into the crowd and killed people. And his name has been circulated. People know where he was stationed. Has he been arrested? No. We have other officers, including retired ones, who are currently seconded to the government in civilian, holding AK 47s, shooting at the crowds. Have these people been arraigned in court? No. Then we have many bodies, including Denzel Omondi, whose body was floating in a quarry after being abducted by the police. Have any of these people been apprehended and charged in court? No. So we know for a fact that Ruto is responsible for issuing the orders of shoot to kill against peaceful and armed protesters. Does he need a dialogue to deal with that issue? Does Ruto need to dialogue with anyone to deal with extrajudicial killings and reckless use of firearm against unarmed civilians? Of course not. Does Ruto need a commission or a committee or a task force to, to fire his corrupt ministers? No. Does Ruto need a task force to dissolve his government? No. Does Ruto need a task force to deal with impunity? No. Did Ruto need a task force to reconstitute the IEBC? No. So why did he wait this long? In any event, he has not reconstituted it. And we know for a fact that given the uprising of the Gen Zs, Ruto is mortally wounded. Ruto knows that in 2027, if we were to reach there, and I would suggest we don't, he would be toast. Kenyans would not be voting for him. So what is he trying to do? He's trying to choreograph a vessel, a vehicle, an outfit that can deliver a, a presidency on a silver platter. As Tony correctly stated, he has completely bought the National Assembly. So there are no checks and balances coming from the institution that is supposed to keep him under check. He has threatened and bought a significant portion of the judiciary. So the rule of law is a myth, a fictitious wish by many people. Ruto knows that the only check now he has are the young people on the streets. And he would like to cripple the young people by bringing PR stunts, choreographing task forces, illegal ones, and committees. And of course, the conman and his associates are always ready to assist them. Now, I have heard many people speak, including Ruto, and they talk about violence. We know for a fact that Kenyans that have been protesting have not been violent. We know that for a fact. We know that for a fact because the first 2 days of protest were very peaceful, with the exception of the police shooting and butchering people. We know for a fact that the demand initially was because of overtaxation and because of Finance Bill 2024. But as a result of Ruto's unbridled, atrocious response, the people have had no reason not to demand more. And right now, the demand on the street is that Ruto must go. So Ruto comes back and tells us he cannot go because he was elected and that his term is 5 years. But Ruto forgets that there is history in front of him that contradicts him. As I have said many times, Article 1 of the Constitution of Kenya vests the power on Kenyans to recall Ruto at any time and take back the power they donated to him as their representative and exercise it directly themselves. And there are precedents. And I'm going to go through the precedents so that we disabuse them of this notion that people cannot do this. And the precedents are not just in Kenya, they're all over the world. The first popular revolution in the world was in 1789, May 5th, 1789, in France. And that revolution took 5 years. It started on May 5th, 1789, and it lasted up to November 9th, 1799. So these people who are saying if the Gen Zs were not able to effect their revolution the first few days, then it is lost, they cannot succeed, are wrong. Because even the French did not do theirs in one day. They did not execute the French Revolution in 1 week or 2 weeks or 1 month. It took 5 years to effect. Now, there are many that have taken a shorter period of time. And I'm only going to go through popular revolutions, not military ones, because that's what they want to suggest. That anybody who wants to remove them is looking to inflict violence or to use arms in order to remove him, that it is undemocratic and it is unconstitutional. The French Revolution was done by people on the street, and there was no use of weapon. Closer home, the Sudanese protests against al-Bashir dictatorship in December 2018 to April 11, 2019, 4 months, were also peaceful and did not involve the use of weapons. But al-Bashir, who was 1,000 times stronger than Ruto and had been in power for 30 years and was a military man, was removed from power. And he was removed peacefully without violence. Yes, people would say later on the military got involved and caused chaos. But those chaos were not caused by the people. And it is not always true that the mistakes that are made in other countries will be repeated in another country. Now, let's go to Burkina Faso, also an African country, the protest happened between October 21st to October 31st and removed Blair Compaore. This one took 10 days. Again, a dictator who had been in power for more than 30 years was removed by people on the streets. Let's go to the Philippines, 1986, February 22nd to February 25th, 3 days protest against Ferdinand Marcos, peacefully removed a dictator, a tyrant, without any uh, any gun being used. Let's go to Sri Lanka. Just the other day, March 2022 to July 2022, 4 months, they removed their tyrannical, their main tyrant, and he had to fled the country. Let's go to Romania in 1989. A dictator called Nicolae Ceausescu, again, was removed by police, by public peaceful protest. In other words, what am I saying? What I'm saying is that Kenyans must learn that we have historical precedents where a president that has become rogue, that does not respect the rule of law, that has abrogated the constitution, that subverts the rule of law, that has tried now to castrate all institutional mechanisms of accountability, can only be brought to account through protests, peaceful, huge protests. There is no reason to dialogue with this man because he has already demonstrated that he's not interested in having a discussion. If he was interested, he would have not unilaterally constituted a committee to have a discussion with the thugs and conmen and purported to have power to appoint 152 people to have a discussion, a monologue with him, a meeting that he chairs as the main culprit that has inflicted harm on Kenyans. He wants to chair this team. Also, he would not have unilaterally abrogated the rule of law and then decided that he constitutes a task force to audit debts that were acquired illegally, and then appoints one of the creditors, a representative of the IMF, to chair that team. Even after the people have told him, you are wrong, this is illegal, and the courts have also issued orders, interim orders, telling him that he cannot continue. He was still making an assertion yesterday and today that those teams will continue to work. So Ruto is incorrigible, is irredeemable, is rogue, cannot be reformed, cannot change, and must be removed from power. So I will end there and say that my suggestion, in a nutshell, is that because of historical context, I believe Kenyans should be holding these demonstrations daily. And I believe Kenyans should be chasing after senators, MPs, cabinet secretaries, principal secretaries, senior bureaucrats, so that they cannot even go to their offices. We must make the country ungovernable wherever we are, so as to make this government fall so that we can go for fresh elections. That is not calling for chaos. That's calling for order, because chaos is the second name of this regime. I will end it there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. for your contribution. And so I have two questions for you. First, I have a comment when talking about how people have been killed. there's an incident that actually occurred where, the name and the number of the policemen who murdered Kenyans was circulating online. And there's a Kenyan who called and asked him why he was killing the people. And he's on record. He was recorded saying, I'm sorry I did not shoot you too. So this shows, the level of confidence some of these people have while killing Kenyans. The policemen, nothing has happened to these policemen, and I think I posted about it in the morning and tagged also IPOA. I would like to request everybody else who's in the space and can help to really try to find a way that at least people who are working in the forces, or what has happened until now, just some justice can be received for the victims, because it cannot be that the police were supposed to protect, even unethically, after killing somebody, go ahead and say to the citizen who's complaining that the only regret they have is why they didn't shoot. The question I have for you, Dr. Miguna, before I move to Dr. Mutunga, talking about the task forces, under normal circumstances, it is the opposition that should try to stop the ruling party. Do you believe that if the opposition was working in Kenya, they would be able to stop, or do you think they would still be outnumbered with the numbers that the current ruling party have? Just 1 minute, and then I give the mic to Dr. Mutunga.
Oh, thank you, Madge, and thank you for that anecdote. If the opposition was working as an opposition, by this time they would have brought a motion of impeachment. But you see, they're not even talking about impeachment. If the opposition was working as an opposition, they would have joined the Gen Zs and the millennials on the streets demonstrating against Ruto. But they have not done that. If the opposition was working as an opposition, they would have opposed Ruto publicly, consistently, and throughout, very loudly, telling him that he had no power to deploy the military on the streets, that was illegal, that he had no power to form the task forces, and they would never have joined Ruto in calling for dialogue. But as you can see, the so-called consultation was between Ruto and Raila Odinga only. Even Kalonzo Musyoka is complaining that he was not involved in the discussions. So we do not have a body, an animal we can call the opposition. What we have in Kenya is an animal we cannot describe. It's not an opposition. And these so-called leaders are not leaders. These are organized mafia, organized cartel. In fact, I was pleasantly surprised today in the morning. Somebody sent me a clip of a former spokesman of Moi who called them just that. So imagine if the former spokesperson of Moi, the dictator that terrorized us for 24 years, can look at this man and say, they're all the same. These are all cartels. They belong to one club, and even after they retire, they will continue to loot public resources because they have passed laws that guarantees that they keep stealing. So what do we need? We need a reset. We need to transform our political, legal, and cultural infrastructure so that we remove from the system this continuous culture of impunity and exploitation. So no, the short answer is no, we don't have a normal opposition. And if we did, yes, they would have brought this government to account.
Thank you so much. So my assumption is that the current opposition in the country is the population and the Gen Zs plus every other citizen that's protesting out there. Okay, so now, Dr. did you want to say something before I go to Dr. Mutunga?
I wanted to agree with you. The Gen Zs right now and the millennials on the street is the opposition.
Thank you.